This little Christmas tree sits in our family room every year, and it reminds us of a Christmas 30 years ago that almost didn't happen for us. It was a year of sickness in our family. Our son Dan was in the hospital for a long time before Christmas, and we were there helping keep him feeling safe while he was in the hospital, and we had no time to get ready for Christmas. But that was the year that our neighbors, out of the kindness of their hearts, came into our home, and put up this little Christmas tree. It's called the Friendship Tree. They made this star for the top, lots of little ornaments. They even put the year on the back for us to remember. And all the kids in the neighborhood made beautiful little ornaments to decorate it. And we take it out and put it up every year so we can remember the kindness of Christmas that year. You know, a few years later, Patricia Polacco, one of my favorite authors, wrote The Trees of the Dancing Goats. And this story reminds me so much of that Christmas that almost didn't happen in our family, and reminds me too of how the kindness of neighbors and friends is really what the holidays are about. So let's read The Trees of the Dancing Goats by Patricia Polacco. At our farm, just outside Union City, Michigan, we didn't celebrate the same holidays as most of our neighbors, but we shared the joy and excitement of them just the same. Ah, such cold the winter brings, my babushka said as she looked out our front window. I knew how much she loved the snow. It reminded her of her homeland in the Ukraine. Just then, Mama rolled into the long driveway. Mama's home, my brother Richard called. Mama was a teacher, but now she would be off for 2 weeks because of the holiday season. This year, we would have a week together to get ready for the 8 days of Hanukkah. The next day, Mama took out our menorah and asked me to polish it. My grandmother made the candles we would put into it. She dipped strings into a pot of melted beeswax. She hummed as she dipped. My grandpa got ready for Hanukkah as well. He carved small toys out of wood. Richard and I weren't supposed to know he was making them for us. But that afternoon when he went into town, we couldn't help sneaking into the workroom to take a peek. Look, a dancing goat, Richard exclaimed. I like this one, I said, cradling a little dog in my palm. Grandpa painted them with colors from his homeland, and we marveled at how magical they were. Just then, my mother called for me, and I thought she had caught us spying. But she only wanted me to go over to our neighbors, the Kremls, for some cornmeal. I practically lived at the Kremls because Cherry Kreml was my very best friend. We loved the holiday season when her family decorated their Christmas tree and we would light our menorah for the Festival of Lights. But when I got there, I found everybody quite sick, even Cherry. She was crying I hope Santa remembers where we live, she wailed. Well, why wouldn't he? I asked. Because we haven't even put up our tree or even decorated. Papa's too sick to go get out of bed and chop a tree down. And then she coughed an awful cough. I ran home and burst into the house with the news about Cherry and her family. Mama seemed very worried. Did you go inside their house, Tricia? She asked me. Well, sure, I answered. Uh-oh, said my brother. They all looked at each other. And then Babushka said, when your grandfather was in town today, Dr. Leach told him that many families around here have come down with scarlet fever. Oh, the Kremls must have it, and I sent you there, my mother said as she rushed me to the bathroom, pulled off my clothes, and scrubbed every inch of me. Am I going to get it? I asked. It's very contagious, she answered. We'll know in a few days. Am I going to die? I asked, starting to cry. No, baby, Mama said. But if you have it, it will make you quite sick. For the next few days, my family watched me carefully. And as the days passed, it was clear that I was not going to get sick. But more and more reports came in to us of lots of our neighbors getting sick. It was an epidemic. We were worried about our friends, but Babushka was determined that our Hanukkah would go on. Such latkes I'll make this year, she said as she found the best potatoes for her potato pancakes. We had roasted chicken and applesauce too. And then it was time to light the menorah. Mama told the story of Hanukkah. Tonight, we are celebrating miracles, she said. The miracle that a small group of farmers could defeat a huge army to fight so they could worship in their own way. And then there was the miracle of the light, my grandfather said. One tiny drop of oil burned in the temple for 8 days. And miracles can happen even today, he said quietly. After dinner, Grandpa handed us the first of our beautifully wrapped presents, but he looked troubled. You know, our neighbors are having such a hard time, and this should be the time of gladness for them. If only we could do something to make their holiday special. Babushka thought for a little while. I know. We should cut down trees and take them to their houses. I'll cut them down tonight. You can help, Richard, said Grandpa. We can make food, said Babushka, hurrying to the kitchen. Mama and I can decorate their trees, I shouted excitedly. But we have nothing to decorate them with, said my grandmother. What about the animals? My mother said softly. And then they looked at me. At first, I was disappointed, but then I thought about it, and I knew it was the right thing to do. Our neighbors needed cheering up, and we were just about the only family that didn't have the fever. Grandpa and Richard brought in the small trees they had cut down. They nailed them to boards so they would stand up. Grandpa started hanging some of the wooden animals on the branches of the tree. Ah, a dancing goat. We shall call these trees the trees of the dancing goats, my babushka said. We sang and we laughed as we worked to decorate and cook and pack baskets all night. Babushka put one of her homemade Hanukkah candles in each basket. So they will have the light of God in their hearts, and so they will be protected and get well again, she said. We loaded Grandpa's old Ford with the trees and the food baskets, and we sent our grandparents out in the early light of dawn with their Christmas cheer. They were like Santa and Mrs. Claus. We waited eagerly for their return later that morning. And when they got back, they told us about going into the home of each neighbor, setting up the tree and leaving the basket of food on the table and putting the candle in the holder for them to light later. A week later, the 8 days of Hanukkah had come and gone, and we sat down to have our last feast. Just then, there was a knock on the door. It was the Kremls. They looked pale, but they told us they were feeling much better. We hugged, and Cherry announced they had something for us. "Look what my dad made for you," Cherry said. And she pulled out a menorah carved out of wood. On it were some of the animals we had given them. "How beautiful," said my babushka as she placed it on our table. We lit candles in the new menorah. Our neighbors all recovered from that terrible fever. Few were left with any permanent damage. What they were left with was a long treasured memory of that Christmas when Santa really did come. And my family, too, has never forgotten that incredible winter of the fever, the miracle of true friendship, and the trees of the dancing goats. And boys and girls, I know it won't be a Christmas that's the same as every Christmas, but I hope that it's one when we all remember the gift of true kindness